Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya Sheikh Hamza, I wanted to thank you so much for coming and giving us your time. Just, you know, we've finished the film, and I would like to just, if you could, say a few words about how you truly feel the importance of Ghazali is to us as both Muslim and non-Muslims.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. What's really interesting to me, Abdul Latif, is that when we did the film, when we did the interview and you and I were talking during a course of a time, you'd been working on the film for a long time, and we talked for a period of time about script and things like that. I think for me, I was really becoming much more acutely aware of just how important the film was, personally, for a number of reasons. The first and most important reason is I don't think I mean, I can honestly say we do not know who Imam al-Ghazali was. The Muslims don't know who he was. We don't know who he was. This man is one of the most extraordinary human beings that ever lived. If you take all of recorded time, all the people that we know, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the great Greeks, if you take the great Hindu, the great Buddhist sages, all these people that have left things behind, if you take all of the great Muslim sages, Imam al-Ghazali is in such a rarefied community. I mean, these people are a handful of people, and he's one of them. And knowing him at a deeper level, I think, is really important for the Muslim community, but I think it's also incredibly important for the non-Muslim community as well, because this man is speaking to all of us. Imam al-Ghazali is speaking to the world, and he's speaking to every man and every woman, and his voice is a voice that has been drowned out in the modern world. It's the voice of the sage. Imam al-Ghazali talks about the three elements of the soul that are in every human being: the pig, the dog, and the sage. And the pig and the dog, the pig is squealing and the dog is barking today, but we're not hearing the sage. And he is that voice. He's the voice of the sage, and he's really challenging us to get control of the pig and the dog, because while they're important to our souls, they're there for a reason. The concupiscent soul, what's called the lustful soul, and the irascible soul, they're important, those elements of the soul. But the rational soul, the spiritual component within man, that's the element that's so sorely missing in the current scenario.
So in terms of the spiritual development of man, I mean, do you think that al-Ghazali's life is the epitome of that search?
Well, one of the things that Imam al-Ghazali did is that he really introduced a concept, even though, I mean, the concept has been there from the start. He introduced it in a way that's really quite unique in the Muslim tradition. He introduces the concept of the wayfarer, the Sadiq. And he extends that concept beyond the Muslim community. He literally describes the entire planet as wayfarers, that we're all wayfarers. And this is essentially, in the Christian tradition, it's the voice of Dante. Dante's Divine Comedy is really about the wayfarer, that you are on an individual journey to God. And Dante's talking about himself. In the middle of my life, I found myself in a dark wood, and I was lost. And then he talks about the leopard, the lion, these elements of the soul. And then he goes through hell, because you have to go through hell, the hell of the world. And then to realize what the world is calling you to, if you answer the call of the world. And then he goes to the mountain of purgatory, and that purification that has to take place. But it has to be an active, it has to be a conscious effort. There's a great scene in the Purgatorio where I think his name is Castello. He's a singer, and Dante loved him. when he was in the world. And he says, sing me a song, because he loved his voice. And Costello begins to sing, and all of the pilgrims that are about to embark on the Mount of Purgatory, climb to ascend this mountain, they all become completely entranced. And suddenly Virgil runs, when he's seeing this happen, he runs and he says, what are you doing? You're not here to do this. This is what you left behind. You've got this huge mountain. You're not here to entertain yourselves anymore. It's a wonderful moment in the Purgatorio that is really at the root of what Imam al-Ghazali is, that Virgil character. He's coming and he's shaking you out of your sleep, and he's saying, wake up. You've been sleeping too long. You've enjoyed the sleep for too long. It's time to wake up, because if you don't wake up now, you're going to wake up to a nightmare. And that nightmare is that you've wasted your life. And that's why Imam al-Ghazali, to me, has an immediacy. When I read, and I read him literally, I've been reading him almost every night. And he's got an immediacy. He makes me, and the beauty of it is, he talks about his own, how he was putting off the journey. That he was struggling within his own soul. He was putting off the journey. So he's telling you, look, I was doing this, and then God forced it upon me. He took away my ability to speak. And that was my livelihood. Because he was a genius, and he was brilliant. And then the other thing about al-Ghazali that really strikes me is he was a master of so many fields, and his books are still the definitive books in those fields. His book on constitutional law, which is called al-Mustasfa, which is really usul al-fiqh, it's the methodology of legal derivation. It's still considered the acme of the Islamic legal tradition. It really is. And that's his book. That's one aspect of his life, that intellectual endeavor. So Imam al-Ghazali was writing in that. He wrote, and it was new, it was original. His teacher, al-Juwayni, was an original thinker, but Imam al-Ghazali extended that thought. And one of the things that he really disdained was the imitative mind. He did not like taqlid. He did not like this idea of blind imitation. He was challenging people, think for yourself. You need to, this has to be true for you. It can't be true because your father told you it's true. It can't be true because your society tells you it's true. It has to be true for you. And the only way it's going to be true for you is if you take it seriously enough to think about it. So that's what he's doing.
This is in fact a result of his first crisis, which was one of doubt and skepticism, I think.
That's what he went, the dark night of the soul. He experienced that in a real way. And he was honest enough not to become a fanatic. Because what many people do when they have that crisis is that they either lose their faith or they become fanatics. Because the fanatic is somebody who, his zealousness will create such internal agitation that his soul is never still enough to have the doubts.
That's the born again, but without having experienced.
Well, the first birth didn't take place. It was stillborn, spiritual stillborn.
Yeah. Now, if we can just talk a little bit about the film. I mean, obviously I put what I could into it. Some scenes, maybe...
I think one of the criticisms that some of the people had that we've shown the film is that he didn't seem happy, which to me is missing the point entirely. It's a very superficial reading of the film. The man that portrays Imam al-Ghazali in the film, and he's obviously a brilliant actor, but the man that portrays the film was portraying a state, and the state that he was portraying was one of what the Sufis called jidd, of absolute seriousness. Absolute seriousness does not, there's a few times he smiles in the film, but not very often. Absolute seriousness is not a morbid approach to life. It is a very intense approach to life. Intense people are difficult to be around for a lot of people because most people aren't very intense. Most people don't take their lives that seriously. some people become witty about it. Some people become cynical. Some people become boring. I mean, there's a lot of strategies that people use to deal with the basic phenomenon of mortality, of the fact that we're here, we're going to die. And death is very real and very present. Death is present in every moment. And embracing seriousness is really embracing mortality. It's what Heidegger called the being unto death. It's accepting that you're going to die, and it's not becoming morbid about it. It's, I need to prepare, because this journey's coming. And that's really what Imam al-Ghazali is doing, and I think that's what you were trying to get out in the film, is that he was serious. And he's telling us, this thing's too important. Don't miss this opportunity, because you only get it one time. Muslims aren't Hindus. You know, I mean, there's not a second chance. And what you do here is going to return to you in the next life. And the other thing, Imam al-Ghazali, one of the things I was reading, in fact, just a few days ago in Mizan al-Amal. I was on the airplane, and I couldn't put that book down. I just got a critical edition in Egypt, so I was reading it. And one of the things that he said, if we look at what all human beings are looking for, they're all looking for happiness. That's it. You know, in my country's foundational, well, you also, you're from the States, but in our foundational document, which is the Declaration of Independence, you know, Thomas Jefferson said, all men are born with certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's interesting because that original statement, according to Locke, John Locke, who originally made that statement, said, and the pursuit of property. But Jefferson was a metaphysician. He had a more of a metaphysician's mind than an empiricist. You know, Locke was more in the empiricist tradition. Jefferson understood that really that is the fundamental human reality, is the search for happiness.